Kind of looking for a new handgun, new everyday carry. I've had my old faithful handgun that I've carried for 10 years now. Absolutely love it. However, it's lacking a few of the modern features that I now am finding very important to me. So, in the interest of finding a new everyday carry, I've brought some of the options up here that are kind of my top go-to everyday carry options. So in the safe today, I'll have 6 different guns that I'm going to show you guys. But what I've tried to do is grab my favorites in each category. So I'll have striker fire, double action, single action, and single action only. So I'm going to describe striker fire to you first. Here we have the Daniel H9. So the first thing, striker fires are easy to kind of identify real easily because there's no hammer in the back here. Double action, single action have exposed hammers. Double action will fire with the hammer down. The action of pulling the trigger will also cock the hammer and fire it as well. After the first shot, however, it will convert to a single action and the rest of them will be short, easy pulls. This has traditionally been my favorite action of firearms. And that's just because I think there's some real defensive benefits to having the first trigger pull require intentional force. It's not an accidental, it's not a reflex, it requires intentional force to pull that trigger. So I'll have a double single option for you, and then I will have some single action onlys. Single action onlys are very distinctly identifiable and for a long time have had a few side effects or a few drawbacks that a lot of people haven't liked, and that's been mag capacity and manual safety. However, a lot of those things now with the double stack mag and with the prevalence of 1911s and 2011s, people are coming back and they're being more comfortable with having a safety on your everyday firearm. I don't think it's necessarily better or not to have a safety. I think there's a couple things out there. As long as you practice with it, I think it'll be just fine in a defensive situation. However, the fear for a lot of people carrying a firearm is that they pull it out in a defensive situation. They go to pull the trigger and nothing will happen because they forgot, because they didn't train taking the safety off. All right, so we'll look at a couple single action onlys also. A lot of the features across all of these firearms is fit and finish, trigger, and a few options. Back in the day, being optics ready was few and far between. Nowadays, every common carry option out there is going to be optics ready. Okay. And really, accuracy, ergonomics, and trigger are going to really separate your higher end firearms. Even though triggers have come a long ways, back in the early 2000s, all the triggers kind of they paled in comparison to what our options are today. But a clean, crisp braking trigger, when you apply force, there's little to no effort, and that's really going to improve your accuracy because you're not really muscling the shot. Okay, so a lot of these higher end options are going to have incredibly smooth triggers with anywhere from 3 to 5 pounds at the most on a higher end trigger. Also, any higher end option nowadays is going to come with the ability to put a red dot on it. 5 years ago, we saw very few guns with red dots on. Now, every single one, if it's a high-end gun, is really being released with the option to have an optic. They're covering it up nicely in case you wish to not use it. But with the advantage that we're learning from a speed and defensive ability with the red dot, there's really no point in buying a higher end handgun without the ability to add an optic if you wish to. So my most important thing to have is a nicer trigger and a good, nice ergonomic fit. I would say that I have a couple favorites. I have been a die-hard double action, single action fan based on some experiences that have happened when I was in the military. That double action pull really saved me in a situation where I started to pull the trigger and then realized it wasn't a threat and therefore was able to not go past the point of no return. So for me, I've only been comfortable carrying something that would have a double action first pull. From there on, single action is great. That's where the accuracy comes from. But a double action first pull has always been an absolute must for me. Now, as I tend to look at all these different options, I realize that I'm not the same as everyone else. And so I kind of break it down into three categories. What's my favorite double single? What's my favorite single action only? And what's my favorite striker fire? Breaking down the Shadow 2 Compact and what I like, and this is the one I've actually replaced my everyday carry with, is the Shadow 2 Compact. So this has everything I like. The only thing I would love, so CZ, if you're listening, I would love this model with a decocker only, but I'm still okay with it having a safety. I am always going to carry in a decocked position. How I decock is I put my thumb right behind here, I pull the trigger, and then I pull my finger out, and that is how I carry. Okay. I know for a lot of people that's been sort of a area of concern. I think for me it's a comfortability thing. I'm just fine with it. My old PCR, I just hit the decocker, holster it, and away she goes. With this, it's just been training some new muscle memory. After I load one in, rack it in the chamber, I literally decock it as such. I don't like to decock from this position because it's possible it slips. Okay. So, and I'm not a big safety guy. Just for the last 10 years, operating a decocker only. So that is my option, my favorite option in the double single category. In the single action only category, these really draw their bloodlines from the 1911. There's a few differences. Now we're getting the benefits of high capacity. We're getting the benefit of the optic. There's a few other differences that some of the 1911 diehards will tell you. But what they're doing is they're keeping the frame metal while they're putting a polymer. In many cases, sometimes you can get a metal aftermarket grip for it, but they're extending this, allowing it to fit modern capacity. So I have two options right here, and this is the new Staccato C. Absolutely love this. Okay, so they've improved upon the C2, and the C2 was a wider magazine. This new C model, this one takes 17 rounds, and it is a very thin, much thinner than the C2 magazine, therefore allowing the grip circumference to be smaller so people can hit the mag release button a lot easier. Okay, so I have two versions here to kind of show, because there's about 6 different options you can get with this. The first option that you're going to get is the grip size. So what you're going to see is one is going to be 15 round capacity, Glock 19, 4-inch barrel, 15 round capacity, just like the Glock 19. This is where fitting comes into play. If you can get away with this, if your hand can fit on this grip, this is definitely the one that's going to be slightly more concealable. I don't love this one so much just because my bottom finger kind of hangs off there, and if I'm doing a speed reload, slam this in there, it's possible that my hand, my pinky, will actually prevent the full seating of the magazine and or pinch the skin. So for me, I prefer the 17 rounds grip where my whole hand can fit on there without impeding the loading of the firearm. So I think it's very critical that everybody's got different hand size. Everybody's got, their own right for them, I say go with the smallest you can get your full hand on. And so this would be my option. We're going to get into whether or not you want to have a safe queen or not later on, but I don't see buying a nice handgun and just setting it in a safe. I say the nicest gun on you should be the one you carry every day and you have a personal relationship with. So that would be my single action only option. And another one I'm very intrigued with is kind of a very unique firearm. Okay, so this is the Daniel Defense Hudson or H9. This is the old Hudson design, but it's been completely taken down and rebuilt and is definitely has its origins in the Hudson, but it's been internally redesigned and a much more sound firearm now that Daniel's got their hands on it. We've went through. Daniel is always going to prioritize one thing, that's reliability and longevity. Okay, that's what you get from a company that's really concerned about military contracts and producing the world's finest, most reliable handgun. They're not so concerned about anything else other than reliability. So here we are at the kind of gold standard 15 round mag capacity, optic ready. And what I like about this is most people who like striker fires really not had a really high end option. This being metal speaks to my hand. It's just something I like. I feel like metal ages better. I'll be the first to admit it's just a personal preference. Polymer firearms have shown that they can hold up to a lot of abuse. Just in my hand, the metal speaks to me more. I think in 100 years from now, the metal is going to just have a much longer lifespan. Okay, that's personal. I know that you could argue me on that, and you would be just as right as I am. That's just my personal perspective. I like the feeling of a metal firearm, and it's only a couple ounces heavier than the polymer version. Okay, so for me, this one's very intriguing. A couple things I look for. I look for how the hand fits in here. I look for the bore axis. One of the reasons I've liked certain guns is to have a higher bore axis, therefore less mass is moving rearward, causing less of a muzzle rise. This one's got a very, very interesting trigger in the fact that the fulcrum point is up top, whereas most are kind of coming in this way when you pull the trigger. This one is actually going from the bottom to straight back. So the trigger is not going in like this, it's going straight back. Okay, so makes for a very interesting feel. Definitely extremely different, but the biggest benefit of everything about this design is making a firearm that doesn't have as much muzzle jump. Okay, so it's a very intriguing option for me. I think human nature is always trying to do something different, something better, and we like anybody that gets into firearms is going to like more of the higher end features, both from an aesthetics. You're going to see most of these firearms, actually every single one of them, are going to have a few options that to me are a must. They're going to have their front serrations. They're going to have optics ready. I think for a modern high-end firearm, that's not an option. You have to be able to adapt to an optic. Every single one of these are going to have a very nice, very, very good trigger on them. And they're all going to be very ergonomic. Okay, so I'm a big fan of the ergonomics of each and every one of these. I like the sleekness. You'll also see a kind of correlation between the mags. Every single one of these, except for the staccato with a slightly bigger grip, are going to have 15 round minimum capacity. I think that's also a must for this Glock 19 size. And I often refer to all these guns as the Goldilocks guns, okay? They are not too big, they are not too small. They are just right. That's kind of how I like my everyday carry gun. I don't want the biggest gun. The biggest gun's going to shoot a little nicer. Smallest gun's going to conceal a little nicer. The Goldilocks gun is the smallest gun that you can shoot comfortably and the biggest gun that you can conceal comfortably. Okay, so these are the Goldilocks size, sort of Glock 19 sized firearms. I keep referring to that because traditionally that's been the gun that's been, everybody's tried to put out a gun at the 4-inch barrel, 15 round capacity that's been made really popular by the Glock 19. Okay, so it's a Dan Wesson, very sleek, single action option. This one is strong side controls, safety only. I am not sure that you can get an ambi safety for this one. So that would be one thing to consider for your lefties. This one does not have a left side safety, but very sleek, modest in weight. These metal guns are all aluminum. The staccatos are an aluminum frame with a polymer grip. The Dan Wesson and the CZ and the Hudson are all going to be alloy lowers, meaning aluminum. In the beginning of my CZ days, I was very concerned with the longevity of the aluminum, and I was all thinking I wanted nothing but a stainless steel or a carbon steel frame. That being said, you can see some of the life, some of the wear and tear on this firearm. It's held up exceptionally well. Kind of led this whole search for the next Goldilocks gun. Big enough to be comfortable in my hand, small enough to be comfortable to conceal. That's the high-end options that I've been going over. I do have one last honorable mention, and that's this little guy. All right, so everything I said about Goldilocks is out the door with this. This gun is not even as large as a hand. All right, this little gun came out earlier this year and is an impressive little option. Okay, this one has a mag capacity of 10, and they make a slightly enlarged magazine that has a transition on there to give you just a little more grip space. This is a very small pocket gun. However, this one is an honorable mention. I think we finally got a comfortable amount on hand, and that comfortable amount for a week to 2 weeks is around 20 of them. These Bodyguard 2.0s from Smith & Wesson are flying off the shelf, and it's just for that ultimate concealable moment when you don't want to pack heavy, want to pack light. It is just a phenomenal backup option. Seen a lot of law enforcement look at these as a backup option. Seen a lot of females look at these as a backup option. And seeing a ton of guys look at this gun just for that pack light option. Phenomenal, improved trigger. Not an option to have this with an optic. However, this does not really fit in an everyday carry so much as a pack light, and you want everything streamlined. So a lot of times people are carrying these in pockets, and the optic is only going to make it harder to draw. So it's not necessarily your range toy, but this is a phenomenal, very cheap, around $400. It's just a nice additional Sunday carry gun. So wanted to show that as well. So to round up, as I put these back away, we have the staccatos for single action people. Phenomenal trigger. One of the fastest shooting guns I've ever seen. It's really bridging that gap from competition gun to everyday carry. It's impressive. One thing I will say is Staccato has really gotten their reliability down pat. We have had zero issues, and we've been selling a ton of this C model. Okay. So we'll have that in the 15 round as well as the 17 round version. Also, in the single action space, I do have a CZ 1911 sort of hybrid. It's a single action only, and this is the DWX Compact. This is a beautiful, phenomenal option. However, optics cut is an issue with this one specific model. We do have the Hudson H9, gorgeous, very bespoke striker fire option. Optics ready, extremely light recoiling, and does not have a big muzzle rise to it. Great, sleek, awesome, new design for anybody who likes a higher end striker fired firearm. Last but not least, the one that I think I will be carrying as my new everyday carry is the CZ Shadow 2 Compact. We have a ton of these in stock, and that's probably simply because it is my personal everyday carry. And what you like, you can't help but talk about. Things I like mostly about this is a performance trigger stock from CZ, optics ready, higher grip, allowing you to have just the shootability of the traditional shootability of a CZ, improved on by the Shadow 2, and the ergonomics on this just fit me to a T. So come on in and check them out. All these guns are in stock. We look forward to showing you the rest of the options that you can get after you pick your firearm.